I'm a crafty person. I don't mean crafty like clever or cunning. I mean, I like to make crafts with pressed flowers and dried leaves. Some people may think making crafts is a waste of time, but personally, I find it very relaxing. One of my favorite things to do is sit in front of YouTube, listening to stories, and make candle holders or wind chimes with my glue gun and those interesting pieces of nature that you can find in the forest near my house. One of the best crafts I ever made is this beautiful fairy lantern, which is a decorated mason jar with a silhouette of a fairy on it and an electric tea light inside. It doesn't sound too impressive, but trust me, it looks amazing. Anyway, this happened last year, right after Halloween actually. I was out in the forest collecting pine cones, acorns, and berries for my next project, and it was late afternoon. I didn't want to go too far inside because at this time of the year, the sun goes down early, around 4:30 or so, and I didn't want to be in the forest after dark. That day was unseasonably warm, and for some reason, I was having a much easier time than usual finding usable materials. It was like everywhere I looked, there was a perfect seed pod or an acorn with a vibrant green bottom and a top without any chips or dings in it. It was cool. I found myself being led deeper and deeper into the forest though, because I kept spotting more and more things that I wanted to add to my collection. Eventually, I noticed that it was starting to get dark, and I knew that if I didn't head back soon, I would still be in the forest after nightfall. At the same time, I noticed something glittering up ahead on the trail, and I decided to take a second to quickly see what it was. And though I couldn't figure it out, I could see that it was glittering. And I did find a beautiful snail shell sitting on this leaf. I was about to pick it up and see if it still had a snail inside when something hit me on the head. It didn't hurt, but I definitely felt something small hit me. I looked up and saw a crow sitting on a branch above my head staring at me. I ran my fingers through my hair and found a small twig and just assumed that the crow had knocked the twig loose and that's what hit me. Then, when I went to look for the snail shell again, it was gone. This was very strange to me because I only looked away for a few seconds, and even if there was a snail in that shell, snails don't move that fast. Unless, of course, it's the racing snail from the never-ending story. This confused me, so I started looking around, searching for that shell, assuming that maybe it just slipped under the leaf or something. The shell turned out to be right next to a bush with these small bright red berries on it, and I started to look more closely at this bush. Something suddenly burst out of the bush across the path and then disappeared into the bushes on the other side. Now, my first instinct was that it was a rabbit, but on second look, it didn't look like a rabbit at all. It actually looked like this tiny little person. It was on two legs, not four like an animal, and it seemed to be wearing rustic clothing. I distinctly remember brown overalls and a greenish-brown shirt. Its skin was this olive tone, and it had messy brown hair. This is what I remember from the split second I looked at it. Maybe this being imparted its vision on me, so it knew what I was looking at. Why else would it make itself known? It moved as fast as a rabbit, maybe even faster. I'm sure it wasn't a rabbit. It seemed wild, but there was something cute about it too, like it was a kid, but much smaller than a kid. Maybe even smaller than a bunny. Now, I didn't feel threatened or like it had an evil energy to it, but I still felt freaked out enough that I had to get out of there right away. I ran all the way back down the path and only stopped when I was out of the forest. And it was a good thing too, because it was pretty much dark by the time I got back to my car. Thinking back on it, I think I might have stumbled upon a fairy child playing in those bushes, and maybe that snail shell belonged to him. I know it sounds crazy, but I really do feel like I encountered a Fae being. And I feel like it's a him, not a her. I think maybe that crow was trying to distract me so that Fairy Child could get his snail shell and slip away. But then I looked back too quickly. At least that's how I imagine the situation, because he didn't feel negative in any way. He actually felt kind of playful. It was just like the feeling that these two worlds were colliding that weren't meant to. I haven't seen it since, but I get the feeling that they're out there with me when I go out there to look for more supplies for my arts and crafts. I've been back to that same spot in the forest a few times, but again, haven't experienced anything like I did on that day. It was just a truly strange and magical experience that I'll never forget. I know there's a lot of people that are skeptical about this kind of thing and might think that what I saw was a trick of the light, but I have 20/20 vision, and it wasn't that far away from me. This wasn't an animal, and it definitely wasn't a trick of the light. I saw a fairy that day, and I truly believe there are more in this world, and there are things that we just don't understand yet.